Hello guys, welcome back. Part 2 of BandLab Cakewalk by BandLab Basics. I just like to call it Sonar myself. Welcome. Let's jump into this a little review. Sorry when plugging in some of those plugins yesterday, some of you couldn't see what was going on. We're going to review that today. I kind of forgot that the OBS wouldn't pick up the widescreen. So I have made the whole GUI smaller today in hopes we can do some review. Yesterday, we went the long way around of, because just I was being stupid, of plugging in basically Sample Tank, which is a multi-timbral workstation, sound workstation, just like Contact. And we set up some MIDI tracks and assigned instruments to each of the MIDI tracks. And we're not able to make anything that resembled music necessarily because of the latency. A note on that, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to try to record anything over OBS until I can figure out the latency, which I did figure out a little bit yesterday. I used a different sound driver on Voicemeeter, if you're familiar with Voicemeeter, folks, and it helped about 80%. But I still have an echo, and it's just a bit too much to actually play anything to. But it's okay, because we have all this stuff already made, and we can just use this. What you didn't see yesterday was the plugin section. This is a help module, and if you're just starting, it's kind of cool, because anything you hover the mouse over or click on, the help module will kind of give you a hint, a clue of what you're looking at. So if you hold it over effects, bypass all effects globally, hold it over here. Takes a second. Current tempo. Anyways, you can see that the erase tool. So if you do get lost and you're wondering what something's going to do, which we're going to go over all this today real quick, you can use the help module. And then once you get used to it and you know what's going on, you can get rid of the help module and use that space. So this pulls this in and out right here. And you'll see this type of thing all over the place on this program. To bring this in and out, they're all over the place. So let's start looking at the GUI. We'll start on this side. I'm not going to work to the right any more than this because you can't see it, and there's not a lot down there to deal with. So let's just deal with what we have here. Here you have effects, audio effects, and what this is a list of all your current audio effects. Audio effects are not instruments. Audio effects is like a delay or a reverb, something that is manipulating the audio that's already there. So these are not instruments. So if you're on audio effects, don't expect to see your plugin manufacturers necessarily. So if I click on IK Media, you see all the EQs and things like that from T-Rex, Celemony here, Melodyne, which is a pitch, which it's just like auto-tune, basically an auto-tune, but better. All your Cakewalk products here. So the audio effects moving along. These are MIDI effects. So MIDI transpose, MIDI velocity, quantize. We can get into MIDI effects later. Next tab, here's the best one, or a good one, and these are your instruments. There's the candy right there. And you can see all of your manufacturers. If you'd like to organize this, you can tweak it all you want. There's several videos out there that explain how to organize your little manufacturers and your plugins as you like them. I don't really take the time to do that. I just want to grab it and use it. Here we have so what we did yesterday really quick is we'll just put that down. There's Acoustic Systems Lounge Lizard 4. As I did yesterday, I would just drag and drop this into a track. So with that said, let's look at what we got going over here. Looks like we have real PC plugged in, Sample Tank. Speaking of real guitar, I think I'm going to be reviewing a beta version pretty quick here of Real Strat Elite, which would be Real Guitar 5 or Real Strat 5. Can't wait to do that. Brand new sample set, new articulations. Looks pretty sick, and you know, I love Music Labs and all their products, so that's going to be exciting, and we'll dig into that. But right now, let's continue with the basics here. You can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 MIDI tracks set up, 2 guitar tracks. I got samples tank set up, doing a couple organ jobs, and a trillion bass. There's some bass tracks, and there's our drums, addictive drums. So notice these are all MIDI tracks. Once again, you can see the MIDI sign, not the audio sign, and none of them are color coordinated right now. So let's look at this little side. This is your inspector, track inspector. In older versions of Sonar, you could right-click on a clip and hit Clip Properties, and Clip Properties would show you the time, where the clip sits, and information about the clip. They've done away with that, and they've given you this really cool inspector area, and the inspector tells you everything you want about the clip. So if I were to click on this MIDI clip here, and come over here and hit Clip Information, boom, there is all my information about the clip. I think this is a really cool, classy way to handle this. Once you get used to it, it just feels you can do what you want to do here, change things, edit things, and then go about your business. Next clip, so you can see how that changes. Whatever I click on, it's the relevant information of where that's sitting. A lot of times you may want to, if your MIDI clip starts on some odd number or somewhere, which I try to avoid, but it happens a lot of times, I like to write the time on the MIDI clip itself. So this MIDI clip starts at 12:01:008. So I will write right after record 1 the time signature 12:01:008. Here you have Pro Channel again, showing you the Pro Channel information if you're running Pro Channel, which we're not. Track information. In this case, these are all MIDI tracks, so it's showing you MIDI information. And clip information. And there we go again, just like this side. You can hide that, and you can hide this too. Bring it back. Just like that. So, moving on. Here we have views, options, tracks, clips, MIDI. All these are little tabs are relevant to exactly what they say. Keep it really easy. So if you pull down this tab, everything relating to dealing with your MIDI, not necessarily everything, but most of your MIDI options will be sitting here. Show velocity notes, show this, show that. Clip information. Here we once again, clips. When they talk about clips, they're talking to MIDI clips, audio clips. So bounce to clips. This is useful. So bounce to clips will be used if I want to take these 2 clips, say, and make them all one clip. So we could go Control, left click, and then we go up here to clips. I think you can also do this by right clicking, but in this case we'll just go bounce to clips. See how it made it all one track right there? So now in doing that, it's much easier to move this around. So if you're happy with that MIDI performance, now you have much less to move around. You don't have to move 2 clips. You can just take this one big clip and move it where you want it. I'm gonna undo that. You see what I just did? Edit, pull down, undo, redo, undo, and you'll be visiting that little function quite a bit in your recording career there with Sonar. Moving along, we have track information. There's a lot of things. We were just looking at bounce to clips, which we did with the MIDI, duplicate tracks, delete tracks, numerous options here. Go back into clips, some very important ones. You have bounce clips. Bounce clips in this case here is referring to audio. And bouncing is what I referred to yesterday as rendering audio. There's two different ways to do it within Sonar. You can render an audio track by freezing the MIDI track or freezing the synth, in which Sonar will automatically create an audio track and basically shut down that VST to return the power to the CPU power to your computer, so you can work on more things until you want to thaw it out and use it. But in that case, you would basically be done with your MIDI or editing your MIDI. You are rendering audio at that point, and your mixing and faders would be, you would just treat that track as audio and you'd be muting because your VST is not working at that point. The second way of rendering audio is up here in clips. If I had an audio clip ready, and I were to click on it, or if I had a MIDI clip ready and I were to click on it, I could come up here and bounce. Is it right here? There we go. I'm sorry, I was in the wrong spot. Bounce to tracks, not bounce to clips. That was just what I showed. Bounce to tracks is what we're looking at, guys. So if I wanted to, let's see, if I was done, let's find a little clip here. Say I'm done with this. There's the organ. And let's say I'm done with the organ. I can highlight. And in this case, it might do both my organs because I'm just going to highlight sample tank as a whole. I'm going to come up here and tracks, and I'm going to go bounce to tracks. It's going to ask me some question, and I'm just going to bounce the tracks because I'm not bouncing the whole mix. And it's going to say sample tank, so I know I'm right there. Because this is an organ, I want to bounce it in stereo. Guitars, monophonic instruments like saxophones, you're going to want to do in mono. It's not necessarily a rule, but it's general. Vocals, mono. So in this case, because it's an organ, we're just going to bounce it as it is. Here we go. Let's check this out. Let's look at the top, mixing audio, sweeping across real quick, and it'll create a audio track at the bottom. Let's go ahead and delete this track. And let's see what it has created for us. Very, very small waveform here. Not very big. Nonetheless, there's your audio track right there. So at that point, we could label this organ B3, and that would be an audio track for you right there. Now right here, notice both sides of this waveform are not the same. This side's a bit thicker, a little bit bigger than the other side. And that would probably be due to the panning on the instrument or whatever effect is on the instrument. And if I were to go tweak the parameters of that organ and mess with the effects, I could probably make it go on that side, but as it is, perhaps the reverb or whatever is on there is kind of panned off to the right. Or perhaps, let's just take a look here. So there are no mysteries, and we'll go up to, and there you have it. Actually, the organ itself, I have panned off to the right. So there you go. That's why it came up right there. And normally, when working on MIDI, I will just leave everything true, because I'm not going to pan anything until it hits audio. We're talking about the different phases of doing this. In the MIDI stages, I'm not worried about panning. I'm not really worried about volume levels yet. I just want nice, clean tracks that sound good. And we'll deal with everything else when it goes to audio. So I'm not going to pan everything out. And I'm not worried, about those tuning aspects. I just want to make nice, clean recordings. Back to what we were doing. We have now bounced our first track ever, Piece of Cake. You can bounce tracks all day long here and there. I'm going to go back up here and undo the mix down. Mix down, bouncing, all the same. And what do we have here? Options. You have crossfade options. I can't really do a crossfade for you, but when you have two audio tracks, by grabbing one and pushing it into the other, it'll automatically set up a little crossfade. Those crossfades can be curved, linear, however you want them. I can get into that later. And then you have view options. All these, same thing up here, view options. One shortcut you want to remember is just the letter D, because it'll toggle you back and forth very quickly between the mixing console and your project. And the more you work, the further you get along, the more you're going to be going back and forth like this between your mixing console and your project. Your master bus, metronome level. You can just pull those to the side, organize this however you want. And so you don't want to close that out. Don't get in the habit of pulling this away and closing it out. Just use D. And if you want to make it full screen, you can. Just use D. Go back and forth, toggle very nicely. So let's just move straight up here. And I'm hearing some buzzing coming from somewhere. Not sure where that's coming from. Well, we'll just deal with the buzzing, folks. Sorry about that. Moving up. You have file functions at the top. It does what you would imagine they do. Save, save as. We mentioned a basic project versus a bundle in the previous video. You can get to your start screen, the first screen we saw for opening a project, a new project. Edit. Some really good audio options here. Here's our loop options. Actually, these are not. These are from through. So if you're selecting clips from start through end, we'll get into that later. Views, all your views and shortcuts to the side. Piano view, which we saw yesterday. To get to a piano view, the quickest way is just to simply double click on it and bring it right up. Processes. These are really useful, especially when you're getting into audio. The gain processes. You're going to use that gain so you can nudge things back or push things 2 dBs up, 3 dBs up, cut dBs, whatever you want. Adjust the volume. Insert audio track, MIDI track. I don't really use these because I just right click, same thing, insert audio track. So you'll see that you can get to the same place 2 or 3 different ways, and sometimes. And that's the beauty of the program. You don't have to do one thing. Everybody uses it differently. Some people, you know, some people use all shortcuts. They don't even touch their mouse. Once again, processes, projects. Of course, once again, you can do things here that you can do things here. Utilities, you'll probably rarely use that. Windows, just, yeah. You can do all that yourself. Moving along, now here's an important section. These are your, see this? Right now I'm in smart mode. In smart mode, you can do a lot of stuff. You can select regions. So if I were to hold down the left click like that, everything in this area is selected. And if I were to edit in some way, it would be affected. Same with audio. If I wanted to affect the audio in some way, everything I selected in that region would be affected. You can also bring it to the top and see how it turns to the 4 ways there. That means you're free to move it, in which you can move it around, up and down. I don't want to mess all this up, so I'm going to undo everything I do. And it's pretty useful for, you know, double clicking. You will do most of your tasks in the smart mode. Smart mode has its own functions with its right clicks. So things that you will find on the right click in smart mode, you'll find different ones in select mode, or not necessarily in some of these, but be aware that you need to use the proper, so select, if you are in, for instance, the piano roll, if I use this, it's just going to write a note. I can't lasso, I can't select all those notes. So what you want to do is you go to select, and then you can, boom, now I can select all those notes. So you got to remember, if I'm in, Smart does what it does, select, now you can start lassoing stuff. Another good one, if you want to move things, everything you do you're going to want to keep in time, because it's all about timing. So once a clip is in its time on the one spot, you got to keep it there. So if I want to move this clip way up here, there's a good chance if I have it on 16th snap, it may move 1 cent, 2 cents this way or that way. And then when I go to play it back, all my timing is going to be screwed up on that clip. It's going to be behind or in front of the drum, who knows where, it's just all screwed up. So a good way, a safe way to do it is to hold Shift and Control down, and then let's go back to Smart, and then select it and move it where you want by holding the Shift and Control. It doesn't allow the track to move anywhere but up and down, so it cannot back and forth. Or another safe way to do it is to simply put yourself in whole. So now any move it makes is going to be a whole click. So there's less chance you're going to go left or right. There still is a risk, and it's much safer just to use Control Shift to ensure you're not going to mess up your timing. Then we have the Edit tool, which would be used if you were to, they have a scroll function in which you can scroll things out, MIDI it for an easy copy and paste. Haven't really used it. Haven't really used the draw tool much either. Basically I rotate between these three tools right here and the erase, which is the same if you were to right click. So if I right click, it's in Smart, it's going to erase. Or you can get the eraser erase and just start wiping things out really fast. Haven't used a lot of the edit, haven't used a lot of the draw. So these two. Snap we talked about briefly, how it allows you to snap everything into a grid. This grid represents the time of your song, 10 seconds, 11 seconds into your song, so on and so forth. If you were to hold this over any note, oops, let's undo that. I need to learn the shortcut for undo. Control C will undo. But this is your time. All these notes land on a time, and you can see it right there. It shows you the key is D6, which is the 74th note on the keyboard. The time the note lands as it should on the 1. Duration of 597. The velocity of 80, which is a pretty hard hit note. Velocities go from 1 or 0 to 127. So 127 you're pounding on the piano, and 0 you're not even touching the piano. And 30 to 80 you're playing some nice music with some dynamics. I'm moving along. Let's keep moving along. Your snap function will divide. Imagine a ruler, okay? So if you had a ruler, this is your ruler, and the snap applies the ruler to everything, and these are the increments. So this would be like a millimeter, a centimeter, an inch, and so on. But this is musical terms. So it's 32nd notes, 64th notes, 128th notes. So if you need to work in tiny, tiny micro spaces and move things, tiny bits, you're going to work in 128, 64, 32nd. But just for general 4/4 rock and roll, click this way, click that way, from 480 to 240 to the 0 to 720, we'll talk about those numbers later. You're just going to use 16, eighth notes, rarely quarter. Very safe place to play. I usually keep it on 16th. Here you got your rewind function. So this will rewind and forward a little bit. These bottom ones will go straight back to the beginning or the end. You're going to be hitting that a lot. Spacebar is a start. Spacebar is a stop. You got your play. Rarely touch it because I'm using my spacebar. Pause. Forward. Back. You got your record button. Rarely touch it because I'm always using the R button. You got your time. You got your tempo. We talked about that yesterday. If you want to change the tempo, you can, as long as you're using MIDI, no problem. Once you start bouncing audio, you are pretty much locked into where you were at, unless you want to delete those tracks. Just click, change the tempo, no problem. You can scale the tempo too, and get into that all you want. I haven't had to scale a tempo for any song I've ever done. But I haven't really covered any Leonard Skinner or anything yet where it starts speeding up or something. Anyways, moving along, you have this little matrix here, which is just a bunch of stuff that I do in other places. You probably will too. Loop functions, there's a little loop matrix. You can get rid of all this if you want. I just use right click. If I'm going to loop, I can just set my loop right here. So let's say I want to loop. I can just loop. And there's your loop. It's going to start there and say I want it to end right there at verse 1. Make sure loop is turned on, which I just turned it off. Actually, when you engage, there it is. Now it's turned on. So now as it plays along, when it hits 4, it'll begin to loop. And when it hits 8, it'll return to 4. Or 304. And if you want to make it start right at 4, you can just pull it down and it'll start right at 4. And it'll just keep looping. Shall we? Yeah. Alrighty. Here you have some performance meters. You can kind of keep an eye on where your hard drive is and how much power is being used. I've never seen it flip out or trip out or do anything really bad yet. That's concerned me. One day maybe it will. And that is basically the GUI. You can get into the right clips for various right clicking on a media clip. You can go ahead and copy paste. From right clipping on a MIDI trick, you can bounce the clip. We talked about that. From right clipping, you can insert MIDI effects. Processing effects, which is basically the same. Audio effects, which you can't apply an audio effect to MIDI, but well, you can. We're not. Anyways, let's just move on. MIDI effects. So there's your MIDI effects, uncategorized, or same stuff you saw up here. Very cool. Very cool. Anyways, guys, that is the GUI. If you have any questions, put them in the comment box and we'll see you later.